Hello class! Today we're going to learn about extraction, which is how we remove things from the earth, including metals and minerals. So first, to start you off with some vocab, remember in your notes you're going to write down the word, the definition or notes that I have about the word, and then on your own time you're going to draw a picture of what we're describing. To start off, mineral is something we're going to be talking about. Minerals basically mean rocks that come from the earth. They occur naturally. They are inorganic, which means they didn't come from a living creature. And they have a crystalline structure, so you can kind of see what a crystal looks like in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And they're made up of a mixture of things. So minerals are made up of lots of different things. So a mineral by itself might not be valuable, but it might have some valuable stuff in it. For example, clay, bauxite, chromite, and salt. Those are all different minerals that could have valuable things inside them that we'd like to mine to extract their minerals, or to extract the more valuable metals. Next vocab word is ore. Ore is a type of mineral that contains a profitable amount of usable metals. So minerals are basically just rocks. Ores are expensive rocks. They're rocks that have lots of good stuff inside them. So when you hear like iron ore, that's a type of rock that has a lot of iron in it that we could extract and make a lot of money from. And then this process of extraction that I keep talking about, extraction means taking a substance from the earth. So we're going to talk about mining, where you're digging into the earth and taking valuable minerals and ores out of it. Or like, think of oil is extracted from the earth by the pumps and wells that we've seen. So there's two types of mining. The first type is surface mining, and it's not a complicated vocab word. It just means mining on the surface, or surface of the earth. So mining on the top layer of the earth. The second word is subsurface mining. Sub, if you think of like a submarine, that means to go below. So subsurface mining means you're going underground, so mining below the surface of the earth. And those are the two main types of mining, but then there's different types within those categories. And then something we're going to be talking about a lot today with every type of mining is tailings or spoils. Both of those are fancy words for the waste that's caused by mining. So to start off with subsurface mining, add a little more to the notes you wrote about that. Subsurface mining happens when the thing we're trying to get to, the fancy metals, are more than 100 meters below the Earth's surface. So we need to dig below the ground. And that picture to the right is a really good example of what we do. We build tunnels underground, and people go in and try to dig out the ores. Some examples of what is mined in that way are coal, diamonds, and gold. And if you've ever seen Snow White, they were subsurface miners. Next is strip mining. So strip mining is a type of surface mining. It happens on the top of the earth. And again, they're not trying to trick you with that vocab word. It means removing strips of soil and rock to expose the ores beneath. So strip mining is removing strips of the earth, or tiny thin slices of the earth. This is used when the ores are really close to the earth's surface, so you don't have to go down very far. It's used a lot with coal. And what happens with strip mining is the tailings, which remember are waste, are returned to the hole after mining is over. So if you're looking at the picture on the bottom of the screen, after they finish getting everything out of that mine, they would just put all of their waste back inside and cover it up like nothing ever happened. Next is open pit mining. So open pit mining might start as a strip mine where they just start removing layers and layers, but then they are going to go down farther and farther until they create a large hole or pit in the ground. So open pit mining is about having a large pit in the ground. This is used when their resources is close to the surface, but they find out that it extends even below, horizontally and vertically, so they can find more ores if they expand their search. And a good example is copper mines, and there's a big one in the picture that you can see that's in Salt Lake City, Utah. Next is mountaintop removal mining. This type of mining is what it sounds like. You remove the top of a mountain, and the way they do this is with explosives. So they'll put something like dynamite around the top of a mountain and have an explosion so that they can get to the ores that are within the mountain. What that means is that the tailings are going to just kind of spread over the land below. And if you think about mountains, a lot of them have streams nearby, and so a lot of the tailings are going to go into the lakes and streams nearby, and we can't put the land back the way it was, right? The tailings just explode everywhere, and so it causes a lot of pollution of the surrounding area. A good example of this is coal. You see a YouTube link there. We're going to watch that video in class. It's about people in Virginia, which is, remember, where I'm from. Mountaintop removal is a big deal there, and people get really passionate about it because, like I said, there's a lot of tailings going all over the place, and people aren't dealing with the pollution. Next, we have placer mining. Placer mining is probably what you think of when you think of panning for gold. This is looking for metals and precious stones in the rivers. So you can see the picture on the bottom left. That's just someone trying to separate out rocks from like nuggets of gold. Same thing with the picture on the far right. The picture in the middle is what you would do if you wanted a bigger business. So not just one person panning for gold, but you can set up a contraption to try and sort out the gold from the other like rocks in the river. Next, we're going to talk about something that's not mining, but it's still extracting or taking out things from the earth. So that's petroleum. Petroleum is just a fancy word for oil. You think of like the oil you put in your car. That oil in a crude form, in like a really rough form, is extracted from the earth because it is contained below the earth. So petroleum or oil is a fluid mixture that is underground. And if you'll remember from our last unit, it's a fossil fuel, which means it's formed from the decomposition of dead organisms. So think of a fossil. As fossils decompose over millions of years, they'll become this really rich organic matter that turns into coal and oil and natural gas. And then all those things can be extracted from the earth, and the way we get petroleum is through these pumps. And if you look on the bottom right of your screen, you see a pump there that is pumping up oil. So there's lots of those all over the United States and in some other places that we're going to learn about. Next, we need to talk a little bit about legislation. So the AP exam loves to talk about laws and what laws regulate environmental issues. So there's two we need to know for mining. The first law is in 1872, and it's called the General Mining Act. And what this was is that it was basically a way for the government to encourage people to mine because they wanted to boost the economy. So we're talking about probably right around the time of the gold rush. And they were basically saying all citizens have the right to mine in the United States. So if you have a piece of land, or if a piece of land is unclaimed, because a lot was unclaimed back then, you could just start digging on your property, and if you find something valuable, then you could sell that. So because they're encouraging people to mine, this law had basically no environmental protections, right? So it didn't say that you had to restore the land. If you cut down a tree, you didn't have to replant it. And so people just were given permission to mine wherever and whenever they wanted. Well, that obviously was not a great idea. So it took them 100 years, but 100 years later, in 1977, they passed another law, and that is the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act. So this act, it's a long word, but reclamation means you reclaim something. So if you destroy the land, then you reclaim it, or you have to put it back the way you found it. So this law forces people, it says it mandates that land is only minimally disturbed during the mining process, and it's reclaimed after mining is complete. Below that, I put in quotes what the law actually means in practice is that you leave the land almost as good as you found it. Because I want you to imagine those big pits that we saw on the ground, and imagine someone trying to put back all the dirt that went in those pits. Even if you got all the dirt back, I bet the land isn't exactly the way you found it, right? The trees are gone, the animals are gone, they've already lost their habitat. So it's not a quick fix, and in addition, there's usually no money involved to prosecute people who are breaking this law. So So this is our current legislation, this Mining Act of 1977, and it does regulate some aspects of mining, but also a lot of mining just goes unchecked and people aren't held accountable to put the land back the way it was supposed to be. All right, so that's all of our notes for today. Please make sure those are complete and bring them to class because I want you to consider a couple of questions before you come back to class. So, one, I want you to write down a brainstorm. What do you think are some environmental impacts of mining? So I've mentioned some throughout this PowerPoint, and I bet you can think of some too. How do you think mining could impact the environment? Number two, I want you to think about what type of mining causes the most harm to the environment. So of the types that we talked about, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but what do you think is doing more harm than other types of mining and why? Make sure you come with a justification. And finally, what types of mining create the least amount of damage to the environment? So what seem to be least damaging to the surroundings and the people involved? So please think of those 3 questions, jot down some answers, and we're going to have a discussion when we get back to class. See you soon.